Welcome to Voice from the Colonized podcast, the weekly podcast where we unpack the legacies of colonialism, resistance, and resilience. I'm your host, Adam.
And I am Scott, joining Adam to dive deep into the histories that shaped our world. Today, we're tackling a heavy but crucial topic: Christianity, slavery, and colonial economies. How did Christianity, a religion often tied to love and salvation, get tangled up in justifying and sustaining slavery?
It's a messy story. We'll explore the biblical arguments used to defend slavery, the pushback from Christian abolitionists, and how conversion was weaponized as a tool of control. Ready to get into it, Scott?
Absolutely. Let's start with the big question. How did a religion with commandments like love thy neighbor end up being used to justify one of the most brutal systems in history?
So, Scott, when we talk about biblical justifications for slavery, it's wild to think how Scripture was twisted to fit colonial agendas. The Bible doesn't explicitly endorse slavery, but certain passages were cherry-picked to make it seem like it did.
Right. Take the curse of Ham story from Genesis 9. Noah curses Ham's son Canaan to be a servant of servants after Ham sees his father's nakedness. Pro-slavery theologians in the 17th and 18th centuries claimed Africans were Ham's descendants, destined to serve. It's a stretch, but it was preached from pulpits across Europe and the Americas.
Exactly. And it wasn't just Ham. Ephesians 6:5, slaves, obey your earthly masters, was another go-to. These verses were weaponized to make slavery seem divinely ordained, especially in colonial economies built on enslaved labor, like in the Caribbean or the American South.
And let's not forget the economic angle. The transatlantic slave trade was a goldmine for European powers. By the 1700s, millions of Africans were forcibly shipped to work plantations. The Church, Catholic and Protestant, was often complicit, with clergy owning slaves themselves. They needed a moral cover, and Scripture was it.
It's chilling how theology was shaped by profit. But here's the thing. The Bible also has verses about liberation like Exodus, the story of the Israelites escaping slavery. So how do you reconcile that?
You don't, unless you're deliberately ignoring half the text. Pro-slavery folks leaned on selective interpretation, while conveniently sidestepping anything about justice or freedom. It's like they read a different Bible.
And this wasn't just a European thing. In colonial Africa, missionaries sometimes justified forced labor systems by claiming they were civilizing Africans through Christian work ethics. It's a twisted logic.
Twisted but effective. It gave colonizers a moral high ground while they profited. Let's hold that thought and shift to the other side, because not all Christians were on board with this. Abolitionists were fighting back, using the same Bible. So, Adam, while some Christians were justifying slavery, others were like, hold up, this is wrong. Abolitionists like William Wilberforce in Britain or Frederick Douglass in the U.S. used Christian principles to argue against it.
Yeah, they leaned into the Bible's calls for justice and equality. Galatians chapter 3, 28. There is neither Jew nor Gentile, neither slave nor free was a big one. They argued that slavery violated the core of Christian ethics. Douglass, a former enslaved man, was especially powerful, calling out the hypocrisy of Christian slaveholders.
And don't forget the Quakers. They were some of the earliest abolitionists, pushing for emancipation as early as the 1600s. Their belief in the inner light of every person slave or free put them at odds with the pro-slavery establishment.
But here's where it gets complicated. Abolitionists weren't always unified. Some were gradualists like, let's phase slavery out slowly, which didn't sit well with folks like Douglass who'd lived through the brutality. And even abolitionists sometimes bought into colonial ideas of saving Africans through Christianity.
Good point. Paternalism crept in. Some abolitionists thought freeing slaves meant civilizing them through conversion, which still tied into colonial control. Meanwhile, pro-slavery theologians doubled down, claiming abolitionists were misreading Scripture or defying God's order.
It's like a theological cage match, with the Bible as the weapon. And the stakes were high by the 1800s. Slavery was a multi-billion-dollar industry in today's money. Cotton, sugar, tobacco, built on enslaved bodies. No wonder the pro-slavery side fought so hard.
Yeah, and that fight wasn't just in churches. It played out in parliaments, plantations, and even slave revolts. Which brings us to our next point, how Christianity was used to control enslaved people through conversion.
This part is tough to stomach. Enslaved Africans were often forced or coerced into converting to Christianity. On the surface, it was sold as saving their souls, but it was really about control.
Exactly. Planters and missionaries figured that a Christian slave was a docile slave. They'd preach obedience using those same verses like Ephesians chapter 6:5. In the Caribbean, for example, Sunday sermons were often about submitting to masters, not about liberation.
And it wasn't just sermons. Conversion came with rules: no African drums, no traditional religions. Enslaved people were stripped of their spiritual practices and given a version of Christianity that reinforced their subjugation. Baptism didn't mean freedom, it meant compliance.
But here's the flip side. Enslaved people weren't passive. They took Christianity and made it their own. In the U.S., the invisible church secret gatherings in woods or cabins became spaces where enslaved people sang spirituals, blending African rhythms with Christian themes of hope and deliverance.
Love that resilience. Those spirituals, like Swing Low, Sweet Chariot, were often coded messages for escape or rebellion. Enslaved people used the master's religion against him, finding liberation in the same scriptures used to oppress them.
And that's where figures like Nat Turner come in. He was a preacher who led a slave rebellion in 1831, claiming divine visions. The system wanted Christianity to control, but for many enslaved people, it became a source of resistance.
It's such a paradox. Christianity was both a chain and a key. It justified unimaginable cruelty, but also fueled resistance and hope.
Man, this topic is heavy. It shows how religion can be twisted to serve power or reclaimed to fight it. What's your takeaway, Adam?
For me, it's about the resilience of colonized and enslaved people. They faced a system designed to break them, yet they found ways to resist, whether through secret churches or outright rebellion. It's a reminder that history isn't just about oppression, it's about survival and defiance.
Well said. And it's a call for us to keep questioning the narratives we're fed, whether they're religious, economic, or political. History isn't just the past, it shapes our present.
Absolutely. To our listeners, we want to hear from you. Drop a comment on YouTube. How do you see the legacy of this history in today's world? And if you want to dive deeper, check out our recommended readings in the description, works by Frederick Douglass, Olaudah Equiano, and modern historians like Sylviane Diouf.
Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell for more episodes of Voice from the Colonized.
Until then, keep questioning, keep learning, and keep amplifying the voices that history tried to silence.